I fought Terry Riot many times, and I knew that there were certain players that I might end up fighting with certain teams, and Terry Riot was with the Bruins, and I would. It's unbelievable to think about it today, how I would absolutely, the day of the game, go over and over in my mind how I was going to fight him, the particular player. And some of these players had no idea how many times they'd lost to me that afternoon. And it was just basically, again, the psych job I did on myself, mentally preparing for the fights.
Can you believe an NHL player once leaped over a protective glass barrier to attack a fan on enemy ice? Welcome to the story of Terry O'Reilly, the man who made Madison Square Garden tremble. His teammates called him Taz, after the Tasmanian Devil. His opponents in the press called him Bloody O'Reilly. Legendary head coach Don Cherry described him simply, "Terry is the type of player I love the most. He is tough, really tough, and that is exactly the kind of player I want on my team." The following 5 stories prove just how terrifying he truly was. On December 23, 1979, the Boston Bruins defeated the New York Rangers 4-3 at Madison Square Garden. The final buzzer had just sounded when a small scuffle broke out near the boards. What happened next would shock the entire sports world. A Rangers fan named John Captain reached over the protective glass and struck Bruins player Stan Jonathan across the face with a tightly rolled game program, cutting him just below the eye. Captain then grabbed Jonathan's stick and raised it like a weapon. Terry O'Reilly, serving as acting captain that night, witnessed everything. Without a moment of hesitation, he scaled the protective glass and launched himself into the hostile crowd of New York, chasing down the man who had attacked his teammate. The sight of a professional hockey player in full uniform, wearing sharp ice skates, climbing over the barrier and charging through the stands, was unlike anything anyone had ever seen in North American sports. His teammates followed. Peter McNabb jumped in to help. Mike Milbury went further. He pulled a shoe off a fan and used it to strike the man. But it was O'Reilly who led the charge, throwing punches for nearly 10 minutes to recover Jonathan's stick and send a clear message. Years later, O'Reilly showed zero regret. In 2012, he stated, "There is no way that guy gets to hit my teammate, steal his stick, use it as a weapon, and then disappear into the crowd with a souvenir and a great story to tell. If it happened again, I would climb over that glass a second time." General Manager Harry Sinden stood firmly behind his players. "We are proud of our players and how they conduct themselves in extremely difficult situations. They will never allow a teammate to be humiliated." If Madison Square Garden showed the world how far O'Reilly would go to protect his teammates off the ice, his rivalry with Dave Schultz proved he was equally untouchable on it. Dave Schultz, nicknamed the Hammer, was the enforcer of the Philadelphia Flyers, a team so ruthless, the press called them the Broad Street Bullies. Schultz was widely considered the most feared fighter in the NHL during the mid-1970s. He built his reputation on intimidation, using psychological pressure to break opponents before a single punch was thrown. That strategy meant nothing against Terry O'Reilly. The two men met in direct combat 9 times across the mid-1970s. These were not casual shoving matches. They were prolonged, exhausting battles that continued until both men had nothing left. In a fan vote following their clash on January 25, 1976, O'Reilly was declared the winner by 95% of voters. Schultz received just 3%. What made O'Reilly truly terrifying in these confrontations was not simply that he won. It was that he turned every single fight into a declaration. When Boston faced Philadelphia, every player on the Flyers knew that intimidating the Bruins was not an option as long as O'Reilly was on the ice. Schultz himself acknowledged this years later. In 2010, he said, "The player I always say is the toughest, just because I fought him 9 times, and we always had honest battles, is Terry O'Reilly of the Bruins. He is a true warrior." If 9 brutal fights against Dave Schultz were not enough to define a man's fearlessness, What O'Reilly did on April 25, 1982, left even the NHL itself shaken. The Boston Bruins were facing the Quebec Nordiques in a tense playoff game. Early in the match, referee Andy Van Hellemond issued a charging penalty against O'Reilly that many considered deeply questionable. That call directly led to a Quebec goal, and it stayed in O'Reilly's mind for the rest of the night. In the final seconds of the game, with emotions at their peak, O'Reilly became involved in a fight with Quebec's Dale Hunter. When Van Hellemond stepped in to separate the two men, a punch O'Reilly threw toward Hunter connected squarely with the referee's shoulder and face. The moment was broadcast live to millions of viewers across North America. What made this incident truly remarkable was not the punch itself, it was what came after. O'Reilly refused to attend the league's disciplinary hearing in Montreal, openly defying the NHL as an institution. He paid the price, a suspension of 10 games at the start of the following season. The incident was so significant, it prompted the league to reconsider its rules around referee protection. The Hockey News captured the moment bluntly in its May 21, 1982 issue. O'Reilly did the unthinkable. He punched a referee in front of thousands. Then he did the unthinkable again. He did not bother showing up to the hearing. That was a quiet act of rebellion against the system. Some fighters win by knocking their opponent down. Terry O'Reilly won by never going down himself. In the 1980 Stanley Cup quarterfinals, the Boston Bruins faced the New York Islanders. Clark Gillies, the Islanders' left wing, was one of the most respected heavyweight fighters in the entire league. A powerful, physically imposing man whom very few players were willing to challenge directly. O'Reilly challenged him repeatedly. Across just 2 games in that series, the two men collided 4 times in total, including 3 times in a single game. These were not brief exchanges. They were prolonged, savage battles that left both men drained. By the end, O'Reilly's face had been cut open in multiple places. Those who were there described his appearance as looking like a road map, a face covered in gashes, dried blood, and fresh bruises. And yet, every single time the next shift began, O'Reilly was back on the ice. Same fire in his eyes, ready for the next round. That relentless refusal to stay down was what truly terrified the Islanders. Gillies himself later admitted, "People always ask me what it felt like to beat O'Reilly to a pulp, but they forget that Terry hit me plenty of times too. Honestly, I did not enjoy those fights at all. They were too brutal." His own teammate Al Secord put it most honestly. "I saw Terry fight Gillies a few times and he looked tired. I thought about stepping in to challenge Gillies myself. But when he took off his gloves and I saw those hands, they were like sledgehammers. He hit me twice and I was done. Only Terry could absorb punishment like that." He finished his career with 2,095 penalty minutes in regular season play alone, the highest total in Boston Bruins history, a record that still stands decades later. Between 1977 and 1982, he recorded more than 200 penalty minutes in 5 consecutive seasons. No one else in Bruins history has matched that. But here is what separated O'Reilly from every other fighter of his era. In the 1977 to 1978 season, he led the entire Boston Bruins roster in both scoring, with 90 points, and penalty minutes, with 211. Leading a team in points and penalty minutes in the same season is a feat previously associated only with legends like Bobby Orr. His career plus-minus rating reached positive 212, meaning the Bruins consistently outscored their opponents whenever he was on the ice. In 2002, his number 24 was retired and raised to the rafters of TD Garden. Ray Bourque said at the ceremony, "Terry's banner up there is not just about goals. It reminds us what courage looks like. He protected me when I was a rookie, and his banner is still protecting all of us." Terry O'Reilly never won the Stanley Cup. But his story is not simply about fighting. It is about loyalty, sacrifice, and an unbreakable will to protect the people beside you. The NHL has changed significantly since his era, and the game is better for it. What remains timeless is the lesson O'Reilly embodied every single night. True toughness is not about hurting others, but about refusing to abandon those who depend on you. When you look up at number 24 hanging from the rafters of TD Garden, you are not just seeing a retired jersey. You are seeing a definition of heart and commitment. Who do you think was more feared in NHL history than Terry O'Reilly? Let us know in the comments below, and please like and subscribe to the channel.